Okay folks, here we are again. Another fish room update. Gonna try to make this, I said the last one was going to be a quick update, and it's actually the longest video. I'm gonna do it this time. This one's going to be a short, quick up to date on what's new, because I keep recapping the old stuff. Bucktooth Tetra still doing the normal. The Studio Trophy Seleucii still doing good. I think in my last video I had the rocks and whatnot in there, but they've been out now probably for actually since the last update. I find that they're not really aggressive enough that they're picking at each other, that they need much cover. I don't notice any ripped fins or any females getting beat up, I guess just with the numbers there. But really the main reason, the practical reason for me, is that every time I go to catch holding females out of there, I got to take out all the rocks. So for the last couple of months I've just been leaving it bare bottom, and then once I notice a female holding, I'll remove her and let her release her fry, usually in like a 5.5 gallon or a 10 gallon. Right now I think there is a couple holding. I doubt I'm going to be able to really get a good look at them here. No, not likely. But I think there's a couple females, but they don't look to be holding very long. Their mouth isn't that distended at the moment. But once I get a 10 gallon or a 5.5 freed up, I'll remove them and place them into there. While we're on the topic of the Seleucii, since my last update, I'm after getting 2 more batches of fry. In this 10 gallon here, there's 2 batches. You can see the size difference in some to the other. Here is batch number 3 and batch number 4. These, I guess this one and this one, 3 and 4, I got pretty much at the same time. I noticed 2 females were holding, and they were looked like they were ready to spit at any moment. So I put a female in each tank. And this tank here, she actually, within the hour, she had them all spit. And that's why I have those river rocks there. I usually pile them up to give the fry someplace to hide. And the female was in here, I think after 3 days, she spit them. I used to strip them, but I found, you know, that was a bit more stressful, I think, for me and the fish. So I like this method much better. It's less stressful on the female. Let her release when she wants to. Then you know you're getting you know, mature fry. They're not coming out early with their yolk sacs or anything like that. And also in the, I guess my tip, if you're doing this, I'm sure lots of people have many tips on Mouthbrooders, but I like to put, like, of course, caves, just PVC piping, that terracotta pot tray, they're silicone together, and this one I did have pipes in it as well. But the reason why is that trying to catch the female after she spits, I find they'll often retreat, the female of course, into one of the caves. Then I simply just take out the cave and plop her into a bag, and then bring her back to the adult tank. And that keeps me from taking everything out of the tank and disturbing the fry too much. So that's 3 of them. So I got to make some tank space. I want to get all these groups of fry into one 50 gallon all together, and then just keep up, like, loading it up with fry, and then with that empty space in these tanks here, the holding females will get placed in there. Little update on the yellow convicts. There was some pairing behavior, and probably the last couple of months, but I never noticed any fry. But in that terracotta pot there, I noticed a female. Actually, that one probably right here, and then that male might have been the pair, but I never really noticed any fry. I was keeping a close eye on. I wasn't going to remove any eggs. Just wanted to get them, like, get their first brood maybe out of the way, and then maybe see about taking fry out once we're free swimming if I seen them. But I didn't see anything. I went back to work for offshore for 3 weeks, and I came back, and she was guarding the pot like she was before, but I didn't really notice any, you know, at that point, if it was the same brood, if she had it before, I certainly suspect it to be free swimming. So what I did, I had to, I was doing a large water change, and also I added some of these pots here that I drilled out with a hole saw. for some more breeding case or some more privacy. But in anticipation that I would come across some fry once I disturbed the tank, I had everything ready. I had a 5.5 gallon, actually that's a lot, 2.5 gallon ready with some of the tank water in it, just in case I seen any fry was I was serving stuff. And lo and behold, as I was siphoning, I noticed a couple darting around on the bottom of the tank right here. So what I did then, the female wasn't in that cave, so I took the pot out and noticed that there was I think maybe half a dozen regulars in there. They weren't quite free swimming yet, so I left them in the pot and I poured them right into the 2.5 gallon, and also I used a turkey baster to suck up a couple more that were moving around. So I guess that's the first brood of them, and hopefully you get a couple more pairs. So bring it back over to the fry tanks, and this tank here is the 2.5 gallon that I put the yellow convict fry into. If you see, this will be a challenge. There's one right there. You can see him wiggling about right there. It's picking up decent. I think there's probably 6. Oh yeah, perfect. There's probably 6 or 7 in there. So I used half of the original tank water where they spawned to, and I topped it up with new fresh water. But I usually sort of use a drip system when I'm dealing with this type of young fry, and I use that drip system. Not fancy by any means. Come over to the food cart here. I use a air stone. Let's see if I can get this. Just an air stone with a valve on the end of it, and I siphon the water into it. I'll probably put the tank probably up here, and then just siphon it down into that and just have it drip. And it's the same thing when I'm doing water changes on like small fry tanks like this. I'll siphon it out with the same air stone setup, and then fill it up with maybe do a 50% water change every day or two. But when I'm adding the fresh new water, I'll usually drip it in just in case. So that's progress on that front. Not that I was growing impatient, but I was, once I seen some pairing, I guess I was getting more so excited. So let's move over. These are the black-barred limeys again. As you know, there's lots more fry are still growing strong here, and actually some of the first ones, that guy, let me see if I can get him here. That fella right there, that male, he's one of the fry actually, so I've noticed that he's sexually active. I can see him chasing around some of the females. So we're gonna soon start seeing some second generation, if you will. Down here, still got the wood cats. Nothing new there. Here got the paratilapia East Coast small spot fry. There's one. Well, I guess they're not fry anymore. I guess he's probably, I'm calling it a male. It's probably 2 inches, a little bit maybe 2.5. There's a smaller one I suspect that might be a female. Hiding, of course. She's a bit smaller, but they're from the pair I have. Here are the Goodeids. Bit of a glare going here. These guys, I'm not growing impatient, but I certainly thought there would be some fry at this point. I mean, as you see in my updates, I've had them, for quite some time. I know their gestation period's a bit longer, than typical live bearers, but I certainly thought I'd see some fry. But, every day I'm checking the floating plants, and I actually got the temperature. I had the heater going in here, but now it's the summer, I find it was a bit too warm for them. So I'm still patiently waiting. There's 2 males and some females. So this will be my first time spawning them, so I'm not like a pro by any means. But I guess it's just a waiting game. They look gravid from the research I've done. I believe they sort of always look like that. Moving right along. They're in here, the moth catfish, hara. Nothing new here. I think in the last video there's one. I think the last video I said I might think about maybe trading them in, opening up some tank space for some fry. I'm not sure. They're neat, but certainly like any catfish like that, you know, you put them in and that's it for them. Moving on to the Tatya Prue guy, the Oilwood catfish. These guys actually bred quite a bit since my last update. I've noticed probably once a week there'll be quite a few eggs here on the rock. Of course they lay them in the pipe, but there'll be probably some in the pipe, and I guess some get pushed out by the female with some tail action. Excuse me. The trick with well, I'm not going to say a trick. What I'm unable to do with them, I've been removing the eggs and using a hang-on breeder box. And I'll get them to hatch, but for some reason, after a week, they don't make it past that. But after a water change here the other day in this particular tank, I did notice a fry, probably 2 weeks old, because he was free swimming like he was, you know, probably a quarter of an inch, which is larger than I was able to get him, let's say, artificially. And he was swimming around on top of the water, and I was thinking, oh, I'll catch them and separate them, but I've done that before and they never made it. So maybe with these guys, or from what I'm experiencing, maybe less is more. Maybe just let do their thing. Now I'm not going to get a high amount of, you know, a large amount of fry out of them by doing that. But I was surprised to see that, without a doubt, I imagine they will eat the eggs. I know they don't show any parental care really, and especially with the other fish in there. But I did notice that they're not avid egg eaters, or at least these guys aren't. Because I've noticed eggs like out on this rock when they are there, that they could be there for actually a couple of days. And you know, of course, as soon as these lights go out, I mean, these guys are cruising around pretty quickly, or at feeding times. So they don't seem to be too concerned. Now I am feeding a lot of frozen bloodworms, so I don't know, maybe if they're full they're not going to bother. But I think maybe with this tank, to try to get my hand in on it a little bit, probably not as much as, maybe not too much, is maybe have a setup like suck up the eggs that I notice on the gravel, the rock, and in the tube, and instead of a hang-on back or a hang-on breeder box, maybe set up something like a little container here, like on the substrate or something, and just squirt them directly into that with maybe like some egg crate on top of it, so they can get in, but the adults can't, and don't really be concerned too much with feeding them directly, like with the, you know, with finely crushed flake food or green water, you know, because I mean that fry I seen the other day was a couple of weeks old, and that's larger than I was able to get them artificially. So perhaps I'm better off having less to do with it. But I think if I was able to separate the eggs, I would see probably more than, instead of one fry darting around after a couple of weeks, you might get maybe even a half a dozen, right? So that might be in the next video. Moving up here, there's the brine shrimp. I just use, I know you can get proper hatcheries, but I've always used just a 2-liter pop bottle with the top cut off, you know, and never had a problem with it. Flashlight to get them to go down, track to the light. Nothing new here. The mascara barbs, rainbow shiners, a couple of them there, and a lone snakeskin barb. Now these guys, I was like any fish I get, I always intend to breed them. Sometimes I don't, or at least I like to know how to. I may never, but I never really had the tank space to breed these guys just individually. But I did see on method I've used before with egg scatterers in a community tank is perhaps, and I've seen in other videos, like, and some people might have a how-to to set it up, but just a small clear plastic container just set there, and with a couple of spawning mops in it, and do a large water change, which when I do on this tank, these guys get really active, and they look like, I've bred barbs before, but not these guys, but they looks like spawning behavior, but with no mops in here. or moss in any form. It's hard to really tell. So maybe if I got the container, maybe put it here, put some yarn in it. I got some green spawning mops, weight it down with some rocks, and see if they spawn over it. And then I'm able to just simply take out that little container, and then I could use that even as the rearing tank, just until they get free swimming, and then of course onto maybe a 5 or a 10 or whatnot. Just simply put a heater in it and an air stone, and just do daily water changes. Might get, you know, might do the tricks. That might be a project for later this week. Down here, I was going to do a separate video on these, and I might yet, but these are of course the common Rosy-red minnows. I just got them, I've had them in the past, but they're a nice little fun breeding project. I've had them spawn before, but never removed the fry. But it is interesting that you know, a type of minnow, or like similar to Daniels and barbs, but where they protect their young, which is sort of atypical of types of fish like that. So I don't want to, maybe I'm not going to touch on too much, because I was going to do a separate video on these guys, mainly just focus on how they're sort of the unsung hero of aquarium fish, in my opinion. So shouldn't focus too much on that, like a spoiler. Here's 135 with the adult pear tilapia East Coast smile spot, and as you've, I'm sure, been following, these guys have bred once, and that was probably maybe 6 months, forever it seems, forever. I've been feeding them lots of live food, mealworms, earthworms, shrimp, frozen bloodworms, the whole 9 yards, pellets. But still not I mean, they're doing well, certainly. Like the male, he's certainly looking good. They all are. But I'm hoping to get another spawn out of them. I mean, they are a care species, but I mean, I'd like to make some space for something else, of course, somewhere down the line. And no update on the 300-gallon pond since the last update, but I am looking into, like I mentioned before, I'm hoping this week maybe get some pricing on beefing up the ductwork here. This is the ventilation unit here for the entire house, but I wanted to get maybe put in a Y or a T here, come right over, because right here, that's just an exhaust, so there's fresh air coming in there, fresh dehumidized air coming in there, but there's no suction down in this part of the basement. So with this being, most likely it'll end up being open. I mean, if I'm not home for, you know, if I'm going to be gone for a while, like out to work for 3 weeks, I might cover it up just to help reduce the humidity. But I mean, that's the only way to view it. So I suspect that a lot more than often there's going to be no top on it. So that's going to up the humidity down here for sure. So I wanted to beef the ductwork up, and you know, so to avoid any future problems. I do have this dehumidifier going here, just from Home Depot, and it's showing 44 at the moment, which isn't bad, because it is the summer here, and not that it gets really hot here, but it is humid out. So that usually runs in the low to mid 40s on a normal day. On a humid day outside, might get maybe upwards to 50. But once I get that going, fill up with water, I suspect that's certainly not going to go down, is it? So once that's done, then I can get geared up and start putting fish in that. And that's where this lone cigar shark is going. He's the rescue, and I was thinking, I've been torn to what to put in it, but I guess once I get rolling, and if anyone has any suggestions, they can certainly put them in the comments below if they wish, for the 300-gallon pond. But not thinking anything too big and aggressive, like no big cichlids, because they're just going to be harder to view from above. But I was thinking about these mascara barbs. If I can't get them to spawn, I do like them, but maybe I'll get them into 300 gallons, sort of make like an active community. But I think that's it for the video. Also, I started using these the bug bites, and I've actually I was always a flake guy, but actually watching Corey from Aquarium Co-op, that's another excellent channel. If you're following me, I'm sure you're following him. But he's a big promoter of it. And I got these small ones, and these are like, it's almost like powder, little tiny granules. But I feed them to everything in the fish room. They're a sinking pellet, the small ones, and everything seems to be going pretty mad for it. And even when I'm doing the powder, this is just a powder I make up. I mix with the bug bites, just the old school Nutrifin basic flake food, and just grind it up in the mortar and pestle and feed it to any fry. And also, this is another new one that I got from Corey from Aquarium Co-op. Now, of course, it's not new, but to me it was. And someone being in the hobby, I guess I was maybe too old school and just going with flakes and frozen. But it's the Repashy. I got two kinds. This is the grub pie, and I got like an algae one as well. But I just got a batch of that mixed up this morning, and I've never fed anything in the fish room with it. But in a few moments, I'm going to do another video of feeding the Repashy and just see how that goes. So that's it for the update, and hopefully if anything new comes into the fish room, or maybe these fry, you know, come around and we get them free swimming or whatnot, I'll let you guys in on another update. Thanks for watching. Bye.